My name is Carol Esser, and I am one of the Master Food Volunteers with Kansas State Extension. And today we're going to be making a gluten-free sweet potato bread. People are very familiar with making banana bread and pumpkin bread and zucchini bread, but they don't always think about the sweet potato. And often you might have some leftover from a meal that you don't quite know what to do with, and so this is a great way to do it. I prefer it over pumpkin bread because it has somewhat of a milder taste. We are going to be making it gluten-free, and to do that we are going to be using a gluten-free baking mix. And what you want to look for on the package is this, 1-to-1. And that means 1 cup of all-purpose flour is going to be equal to 1 cup of this gluten-free baking mix. So they're available in grocery stores. If you are going gluten-free, need to be gluten-free, you might want to try a couple different brands and see what you like, because some people like different brands better than others. So we're going to start out by mixing the dry ingredients. And so I've got a cup and 3/4 rather, of the gluten-free flour. I have got a cup of sugar. I have got a teaspoon and a half of cinnamon. I have a 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, one of the things about baking powder and baking soda is sometimes they will get sort of clumpy in the container. So I try and run them through a sieve before I bake, because it's kind of unpleasant if you get a clump of baking powder or baking soda. It's very, very salty when you do that. And then I also put in a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to mix all of that together, because one of the things about a quick bread is that you don't want to do too much mixing, because that will make it tougher. And so by mixing the dry ingredients separately from the wet ingredients, you'll be able to accomplish that combining of the wet and dry much easier. So then we're going to take the wet ingredients, and this is a cup of sweet potato. And again, it can be left over from a meal. You can bake a sweet potato. That's about 1 large sweet potato is equal to a cup. And so you want to mash it, make sure that it's pretty well cooked. And then to that, we're going to add 2 eggs. Going to add a 1/2 cup of vegetable oil. And we're going to add a 1/2 cup of water. And then we're going to mix this together. And I probably should have done a little bit bigger bowl, but we are going to mix this together as best as we can. And then we will mix the wet and the dry ingredients and use the mixer to get that going. So this is a really good recipe, because especially after the holidays, if you have leftover sweet potato or just after a meal, and sometimes you don't quite know what to do with it, this is a really good recipe for that. And it's something that if you're tired of some of the other quick breads, this is a good way to do it. So we have the dry ingredients that we've pre-mixed. We're going to add in the wet ingredients, and then we're going to quickly mix it just so it's blended. Again, the longer you mix quick breads, the tougher they usually are. And so you want to just barely get them combined. And I'm going to stop and stir. You can see there's a lot that's the flour that is still on the outside. And you want to make sure you get that all incorporated, because again, you don't want any pockets of flour. That's not very appealing to your quick breads. And it's pretty mixed together. And you'll see that the sweet potatoes, there are some that are a little bit bigger lumps than others, but by and large, they're all mixed together. Now we're going to pour this into a grease pan. And sometimes people want to grease and flour pans. If you do, make sure you use your gluten-free flour to do the flouring part. And some of the cooking sprays have, if they're a baking spray, they will have flour included. So you want to make sure that if you're using one of those, that it also is gluten-free. So we're going to pour this in the pan. I have the oven preheating to 350 degrees. And we are going to bake this for between 50 and 60 minutes. You can always put a little bit of sugar on top if you would like to make it pretty, or sugar cinnamon mix. So This is our pre-baked. We're gonna put it in the oven and then we'll come back in 50 to 60 minutes.
Yeah.
It's come out of the oven. It was in about 50 or 60 minutes, probably 60 minutes. And so we're loosen the sides a little bit to make sure that it will come out. Always a good idea to do this. And then I shake it a little bit sometimes. And then what I do is do this, and it has come out beautifully. Put it down here. You can see we have a lovely loaf of bread. And the best way to cut bread is with a serrated knife. This is still hot, so it may fall apart a little bit when we do it, but it's delicious when you eat it hot. So just have a slice. Ah, yeah, it's coming beautifully. So you can see what it looks like, the inside. It's very tasty, very light bread. So hopefully you will enjoy this different quick bread.